Welcome to the VTS podcast today on Wednesday, May 14th. Today, my guest is Kevin Goodman of BlueBridge Networks. I want to welcome Kevin. You're in Ohio, correct, Kevin?
Yeah, we're in Cleveland, Ohio, and thank you for having us. It's always fun to hear other stories and of course tell your own about the landscape and growth of a company and technology.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about BlueBridge Networks.
So BlueBridge Networks is a facility-based operator, meaning we own and operate data centers. And from that, we deliver MSP, MSSP work and license hardware software reseller as well. We have our own cloud infrastructure in two of our facilities that are dually connected. And of course, as a data center operator, we have direct connects into several of the big boxes. I would say that most of our customers would be what you would term hybrid, where they have a little co-location, a little on-prem, a little in this cloud, a little in that cloud, some in our cloud. Some are managing their own systems, some are using us or others. And so we remain our core competency data center. But out of that 24/7, 365 high availability, reliability, security, compliance, culture, and day-to-day life is what bore the MSP and the MSSP work. And it was a nice segue, and we've grown that. And it grows faster than the co-location at this point.
Awesome. So what type of customers does BlueBridge Networks work with?
So we've got a wide variety that in a simplistic, pithy way mimics the economy of Northeast Ohio. So, manufacturing, private law firms, accounting firms, K through 12, higher ed, county government, state government, local government, software companies, and logistics, trucking, shipping, that kind of thing. And HIPAA. Cleveland's a very profound medical city with the Cleveland Clinic based here and other great institutions. And then so a lot of
And
different.
also, I'm a Cleveland native. I was born in Cleveland. I
Oh,
didn't
that's
tell you that the last time.
yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, so the mimic, that I just described, and that's our
Mm.
base. Our base, what I'd say is our strongest, fastest growing currently in the co-location is state business. And the reason for that is we have Ornet, capital O, capital A, capital R, small N-E-T, in our facility it is Ohio's internet, if you will. It's born out of Ohio State University, supercomputer center and the computer center in Columbus. And it serves K through 12, higher ed, research projects, different nonprofits. And as a result of that being in our facility, the head-in at 100 gig head-in, we now have what's very exciting, for example, NG 911, which is the new generation 911, no longer landline based. And it's a very important and robust piece of infrastructure that's in a data center within our data center, if you will, four walls, doors, etc., instead of cages like the others, for physical and logical security. And then the county, Cuyahoga County, has their data center with us, and then the OTEC, and the list goes on. And it's the RTA, the rapid system moving in, so quasi-government. The largest growth in the colo is around government, quasi-government, and for the reason of the presence of Ornet. They want to connect to Ornet. Then I would say our business varies. We do have a number of multi-billion-dollar companies that are either M&A owned or publicly traded or private. which do have a handful, like some cool long-term customers with Highland Software, so on base, we're backed up anywhere in the world. It backed up to us. Uh, so there's been some really cool software companies aside from them, but there's a number of multi-billion dollar companies. And then there's down to the mom and pops, under 1 million. And I would say our sweet spot, if you will, or our most prominent companies are in the 100 to $700 million range, most specifically around 250 million dollars a year revenue would be our most prominent customer if you're talk about, types of revenue. But the types of industry are all across the board. And right now, the fastest growing is state and local government.
Interesting. Those are larger customers than average, I would say, compared to the small and even medium sized, depending on what your definition is there. So it's you must have a lot of users per company, a lot more than most.
It varies. It's amazing. Um, some customers are very needy in that they don't have an IT camp. They don't have a bench. And we are that bench or augmentation of their staff, if you will. And so it varies where some customers like Highland Software used us, never used us in an MSSP way, always internal managed, and we're just simply a traditional colocation customer. And then there's other customers who are completely reliant upon our expertise of colocation, cloud, managed services, licensed hardware, software reseller. We're just they just don't have a staff. We are the staff, and we are the infrastructure, and we update and maintain, manage, patch the whole 9 yards. So it fluctuates, and it's all across the board. Most of the companies that we manage, I would say, from desktops are 500 and under. I have some as small as 10, and others in the 5,000 range. Desktops. Never had the big 100,000 desktops kind of companies, although some of them exist in Cleveland. Fortune 100 companies, they are primarily internally served. So although I know them professionally on boards and such, there's quote unquote no business to be had. That work is done internally. So we don't see a lot of that locally. We'd have to go outside of the area in order to get those kinds of customers, because for better or worse, a lot of these Fortune 100s that live in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio area are very well self-maintained, and they may have components of MSP here or there, but typically they would use the larger MSPs as opposed to us being a regional player, white glove service. We might, be triple better the service and cost, but well, saying no one gets fired over IBM. So a lot of times they may hire, and I don't want to name them to disparage them, but whether they're better or worse, but we're not at the table. They'd rather pay more and have the name and be served. And so it's a very hard thing for us to break in. It's a big challenge. For 20 years, it's not been something that I've been successful at in terms of serving the Fortune 100, but there are companies that are national, some of them that reside in Cleveland and have, offices here that serve them, and they do, quite frankly, a good job. So it's tough. But I do have a very strong base of Northeast Ohio companies and 250 companies in what they call Team Neo, there's 15 counties of what is Northeast Ohio that spread from like Toledo to Ashtabula
Mm.
and down south towards Akron. And so from that, and then we do have customers that are outside of Cleveland. But I would say that that's probably 10% if they're not headquartered here. We have customers all over, from all over the world, that might use our cloud and might use our managed services combined, or they may have a co-location presence here. Or they might run a certain software here that they might also run in the West Coast as a DR or primary. So when you have the facility and you have the mix of engineers and the different products and services, you provide a lot of opportunity for getting a customer that if you were only one of the other, you couldn't get. If you were just an MSP or if you're just a data center, you'd have a tough time breaking into some of these larger ones that we serve because we're so versatile. We provide assets to them that are, nuggets, genuine recipe for success, and we then can be more deeply embedded into their day-to-day, and they can into their day-to-day IT, and they can focus more in their day-to-day business than on what we do in the back end for them in the software or infrastructure side, or management or security side. So the more we can take off their plate, the more they can invest in people that actually do what they do every day and not have to worry as much on the IT. But so we do have some companies who are very, very large who have a person or two, and they are our boss, if you will. And so the way that we integrate into some of those larger companies that have very small staffs is that, we serve them, and that's our CTO, if you will. We have different regular, quarterly, weekly, whatever the case may be, meetings where we make sure we're meeting both the business and the IT objectives of the company, and that person's leadership is what drives the agenda and keeps us on track for them. So we're able to serve some very, very large companies with small staff, by virtue of a discipline or repetition of some cadence of meetings and meetings of agendas that have specific projects, and making sure that we're meeting those projects and objectives, and making sure we're keeping them ready for their audits, whatever audits they're under, compliance levels. And it's a lot of work that goes into that. So the regular meetings, the cadence of those meetings provide us a footprint and a foot pathway to success. And that takes time and credibility to build, where that person or those persons allow us into, underneath the kimono, as they say, and what it takes for us to deliver operational excellence takes trust. And we gain that trust through time and production and excellence and good operational excellence, which builds credibility and the standing. And then as that moves on, we can then become better and better stewards of their infrastructure or their lifeblood, which is data. For everyone, the lifeblood of any company is their data. So for us, it's a long answer to your question, but there are so many different ways that we serve. And as a white glove regional player, we need to be able to be strong and diverse in whom we serve and how we serve them. And certainly for us, third-party audits of, what our controls and someone auditing us is mission critical. We just finished a SOC 2 Type 2 with, 77 pages of controls with 0 exceptions. And then our customers can take and deliver that to their auditors. And there's other frameworks and audits as well. want to waste time, on all those, but that's a whole gamut in itself, which allows standing and credibility in that marketplace to our customer base where they require that kind of complexity of compliance more and more today than ever. And lastly, I'd say a big business item lately has been gap analysis for insurance coverage. So cybersecurity has been harder to obtain and harder to articulate. And so insurance companies are demanding scans and reviews of systems, and then they make a gap analysis, and then we help to remediate that gap, and then we help them either keep it the insurance or even help them reduce the cost of that insurance by those things that we correct in the gap analysis that's identified. And so that's been another interesting spurt of growth, is the change of cyber companies going from, hey, you just pay the fee and you got coverage, and they got burned because they didn't really require the basic blocking and tackling in whether a NIST standard or zero trust or whatever you want to call it. And now they have those requirements, and they run those scans, and they come up with the gaps, and they need to be remediated, and then the insurance is bought, and then the insurance, should they have an issue, will pay. And if those things aren't done, you can't buy it, let alone pay. So I see that as any kind of maturity in the marketplace is a good thing. Obviously, it's a good thing because we get the business of remediating and possibly maintaining, but it's a good thing because universally, anytime we can tighten up the ship, if you will, and make the internet, the web data centric world less of a wild, wild west, we've done a good thing. I think a lot of the work that we do isn't just the companies we serve, but it's also very important in terms of economic security, for homeland security, for patient services, for individuals' protected healthcare information, for the things that we protect are so critical. And a lot of what we do, if we'd fail, would people die? Probably not. But there is a lot of what we do where if we failed, people would and could die. And so none of it's less important. It's all very important. Everything that you do for a company in a web and data centric world that is about high availability, reliability, security, compliance. So these things are mission critical to the day to day. It helps them remain competitive. They can demonstrate coverage and protection to their prospects, to their internal or external customers, and it helps them, like I said earlier, focus on what they do day to day, the business that they're in. Let a doctor be a doctor rather than worrying about his EMR. So I think one of the things that keeps me in the next 10 years of the game is the excitement of being good steward of infrastructure and seeing how that changed radically from the last 20 years that I've been here, and how things like AI and other elements that will make protecting our companies' data, which, as I said, is their lifeblood, and the beauty of being a steward in a digital transformation gives my life meaning. It's beyond just the data. I'm doing those things that help that company operate in an operational excellence, and that brings really profound meaning to my life.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate your time on our podcast today. And I would be shy if I left and didn't tell you how much I love your shirt. What kind of material is that?
So it's polyester.
Love it, man. I
Yeah,
love it. You
thank
had a
you.
nice shirt on the last time too, so it must have been the same place. Like
Yeah,
it.
I'm known for my colorful dress on occasion, as well as
Awesome.
my BlueBridge white button down and blue blazer uniform. If I'm not in that, I'm all in many different coats and colors. Some people make jokes and say, Jacob in his amazing Technicolor dream coat. Some of my coats are so colorful and patterned, but
Love it. Love it. So, for the viewers, this is Kevin Goodman of BlueBridge Networks in Greater Cleveland, Ohio area. Thank you again, Kevin, for being on the show, and enjoy the rest of your week.
thanks for